If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Alrighty. Welcome to another edition of the African Millennial Radio Show on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. And I've been enjoying it back to back. I mean, we had a Kundayo last week Friday, and he gave some insights on data, on, the fact that organizations need to start educating themselves on how African millennials think, how they behave, how they react to content on the internet so they can use it to make their marketing decisions better. And on the line of education, I have someone with us today. I've known her for some time. I think I met her a couple of times. First of all, at a cafe where I go sit down with my laptop and buy this tall glass of Frappuccino and just sip on while I work. She's someone from afar who you can say has a huge sense of discipline, of course, enduring values straddling everything happening about her. And then we got talking at some point, and then she invited me to come be one of the speakers at her conference at the Social Media Week, and it was really, really nice, right? I'll call Simi an educator. I'll call her a reference or some sort of a godmother to the millennial generations, and it's very, very nice to have Simi over here. Hi, Simi, how are you doing?
Hi, Tomi. Wow, a godmother to the millennial generation. I feel like that's the biggest accolade I've received in a while.
Well, you are.
I'm doing well, and I'm glad to be on the show today. Thank you, Tomi.
You're welcome. So straight to our talk this afternoon. There's something that's been bothering me for a very long time. I'm sure it's burdened a couple of people who have noticed. We have this notion about millennials, and sometimes it stems from, are they as educated as they're supposed to be, or is it just plain ignorance? You go on Twitter sometimes and you just see some things popping up and you're wondering, how did this person come up with this opinion? Was he well informed? So I want to ask though, from what you see, what do you think about millennials, how they think right now? Can you maybe give some insights into where maybe the root is? Of course, millennials are very creative, yes, but then I really just want to look at the dark side of things right now. Can you just give some insight into
the dark side?
Yeah, I mean,
wow. Can we label them to begin with? Okay, so as you started out by saying, when you introduced me, I am an educator, and I describe that. I have my own unique definition for what that means, right? Essentially, it comes down to recognizing that there is a value in every individual, and I believe that education is the mechanism by which we tap and harness that value. I believe that people are more productive when they identify their talents, their skills, their competencies, when those things are cultivated and then translated into, productivity. And so that's my notion of education. And so it begins from a perspective of recognizing that there's value. To be honest with you, I'm deliberate about steering clear of maybe boxing in any generational, archetype into, certain characteristics. And this is because every generation has its own qualities and characteristics, and those things are usually reflective of the environment, the conditions. So many factors inform what we characterize a generation by, and so I think it's limiting. So maybe I'll check the dark side per se, but I would say I agree with you, that millennials are creative, are far more exposed than prior generations because they have so much more access information more than any generation before their time. Then maybe rather than say the dark side, I would say the underbelly of this is that on average, so I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of university students in Nigeria, and especially those transitioning into the world of work. And this is the typical impression I gather, or that I have employers comment on, is that they're very confident, sometimes overly confident, and that's why you see them eager and unashamed to air their opinions on social media.
Right.
There's a strong sense of individualism and just a sense of certainty. And I think that this opinionated stance comes from just, well, I have access to information. It doesn't matter if that information is fake news. So there's a confidence, but sometimes there's very little substance behind that confidence. Again, I'm not saying the millennials.
Okay.
That's just reality. Yeah.
Okay, I like that angle. I like the fact that you're supposed to give the kid 6 strokes of cane, but then what you did was to tell the kid to kneel down and then write, "I will not do this again," 5 times and then the 40 leaves. So I like that approach.
Yeah.
I like that approach. All right, so okay, guys listening, you can hear the shaky voice, right? It's because Simi is not physically in the studio, so we had to go by means of technology. Simi is miles away from where we are in Lagos. She's somewhere in Canada, right? So enjoy the show with this experience, and I'm sure it's really looking good already, especially with the insights Simi has been dropping. All right, so I saw something. I started noticing that thing from 2016. So I was on the internet one day and I saw World University rankings, and I saw the chart. So that thing, you can go on the internet right now, guys listening, you can go on the internet right now and just search World University Rankings 2016, 2017, 2018 as you're listening. So, you see why I'm saying some things, and then we just go on with that. So I saw the chart and I saw that Nigeria was white. So the least color was maybe a very, very faint yellow to show that, okay, maybe 1 to 2 universities that is being recognized as what a university should be in the world today. And Nigeria was white. So by the following year, we got a bit of color. And then it's 2019 right now. So the way the 2019 one is done, according to World University Rankings, is there's a meter and then, yes, same colors and everything. But then we have just 1 dot in the southwest region of Nigeria, right? Now, we have a lot of people in these universities trying to get educated. And, the world is not even recognizing a lot of those institutions as what universities should be in 2019. Fast forward 4 years' time, they sign their shirts and all the things. Yeah, I'm out of school, yada. Now, Africa was white. Let me not just say Nigeria alone. A lot of the African, there's just a couple of dots somewhere in the southern part of Africa, then maybe 2 or 3 dots in the western part of Africa, and somewhere, I think, in the eastern part. But the whole place was white. Now, we have these people now out of uni, and then they want to get jobs, they want to live, they want to get married, they want to give birth to new human beings. And this is the generation that we say would handle the nearest future. As an educationist, right. Simi, I don't know what question to ask right now, because even saying that thing is breaking my heart a bit. But can you maybe talk about that first of all? I don't know, maybe from the point of what.
May I ask why it's breaking your heart? Let's do a mini session.
So the reason why it's breaking my heart is this: it's you go to school, you're supposed to be educated. Even if you go to the best university in the world, by the time you're done, right, what you studied is 3 or 4 years outdated because there's a new study. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, this one is not even. I mean. Have I explained why it's breaking my heart right now?
Yeah, well, I'm starting to get a sense of it.
Okay.
I think there's a lot that can be said, and, interesting, you should mention my being away on this trip. And one of the things I'm doing is engaging a long-term client who has just been working on preparing small business owners, particularly younger generation business owners who want to, and she's developing this thing called an MBA for SMEs, and the point being, hey, you don't need, when you start your business as a young person, very often you jump in first, and maybe you're doing well along the way, but eventually you realize that there's some things missing, right? If you don't have an effective system, it doesn't work. Well, many people would further their education and say, hey, I'm going to go get an MBA to allow me to better move this along. And her argument is, hey, why spend money and time on an MBA when the truth of the matter and reality of today is the knowledge you need and the skill sets you need to succeed as an entrepreneur in this age is not necessarily being taught, in the schools, and so it's a problem that exists across board. And I also want to reference, you didn't mention this, but for our listeners, the session that I invited Tomi to speak at was hosted by an organization I founded called Jazz Academy. And the goal is to develop a workforce of freelance talent across Nigeria, and then to roll that out obviously across Africa in the near future. Because the reality of the matter is that we can't talk about university education without touching on employment. The education to employment pathway is front and center in any higher education conversation you will have today. And so let's talk about what is the current state of affairs with regard to universities. Let's start with Nigeria, right? We know that presently in Nigeria, we don't have enough spaces in our universities to accommodate the number of students who apply every year. As many as, depending on who you ask, 1/3 to half of the people who apply to enter university in Nigeria are not able to enter, and so some seek alternatives outside the country or, online education, that sort of thing. But that, is not only in Africa or in Nigeria. That same pattern is being is seen replicated across the world right now, and globally there's a conversation around, okay, what do we do? Okay, so I looked at the map you shared, and yes, truly, I mean, if the indication or if the indicators for our youth success were based on the color coding, I would be crying too. I would be very sad and heartbroken with you. To a large extent, I mean, Nigerians, we love our paper, we love the certification. And also to a large extent, there is a place and a necessity for higher education. But the good news, I always like to look at, yes, it's not all dark. The good news is that increasingly, the types of jobs that will be required in the future do not necessarily require a university degree. Now, does that mean that Nigeria or Africa we are home free, it doesn't matter, we don't have institutions? No, because what I think we'll start seeing is that a lot of these higher institutions, and it's already happening, if you look across the West, many of the higher education institutions are now looking for ways to modify the programming so that you don't have to sit in university for 4 years to become a software engineer. They're now having to compete with the likes of General Assembly, Andela, organizations that use bootcamp style approaches to prepare people for the world of work, and that's kind of where we're going. So while it can be discouraging to realize we don't have, in terms of like brick and mortar institutions that can take in students, I think that it presents an opportunity for us now. Nigeria, and Africa on the whole, I think is quite accustomed to leapfrogging and identifying, where the trends are going and making the most of it. So so my commentary on that would be, yes, it's not good, but we have an opportunity we can take advantage of.
All right. I mean, that's a lot. You just schooled the government right now, and I like that. And then you also just schooled a lot of the citizens, right? And I'm sure that using Nigeria as a reference, I'm sure a lot of other African countries listening in right now can see similarities and probably adopt what Simi has just said, into conversations and then use it to get work done. Simi, first of all, if you want to be reached, where can you be reached on?
You can reach me on Twitter at Simi Lawoyin. It's SIMILAWOYIN. And you can find out more about Jazz Academy by visiting www.jassacademy.com.
Okay.
You can also find Jazz Academy on social media, and we frequently provide free trainings and opportunities for freelance jobs. So if there are any freelancers listening out there, you can work remotely and take advantage of the gig economy.
All right. Thank you so much. So now, Simi, there is this thing, right? So you've just talked about. No. Before continuing, Simi has given you a breakdown of everything, or every avenue you can use to reach her. She's a good source of insights to education. So I think you should avail yourself the opportunity of talking to me. So Simi, now you've talked about what should be done. Now, what should the millennial do in 2019? Right. So everybody now, a friend of mine called me. He's a doctor of economics in the University of Sussex, and he said that.
Wow.
He asked me a question. He said that, are people becoming entrepreneurs because of the passion for entrepreneurship, or they're becoming entrepreneurs because they need money to survive? All right, so whatever the answer is, okay. Now, you have millennials just trying to get something done. Can you give suggestions on how you think millennials can at least just educate themselves?
Sure. Yes, and thankfully, the answer to that question is quite easy because of the access to information we have these days. For a long time, I've been a proponent of seeking information. To be honest with you, the people who excel, you hear of recessions and a general downturn, and then you'll hear of these random individuals who made money during the recession, who excelled, when things were looking bad. And usually these are people who are able to, who are keenly aware of the environment, who are able to stay in touch with what's going on. And I think that's missing. Even though our millennials spend a lot of time online and they're very digitally savvy, very often that time is spent on frivolous, or consuming frivolous content or just chattering online without, adding any value. And I don't mean that as a diss, it's just the facts point to it. So I would say the millennial who wants to stand out should be deliberate about how you're using your time online. There is a lot to be learned, and there are success stories, of people who through just watching YouTube videos have set up a business or learned to do ABCDE. Don't take it for granted. Those stories you hear are true, and it's a lot easier to these things are a lot easier to achieve than you may realize. So, for example, with our freelancer program, we literally have people who maybe, month one hear about for the first time what freelancing is, and by the third month, simply by upskilling themselves, identifying, okay, I already have this skill. One of the encouraging things I found, we did a survey of university students. This was just in Lagos State though. And we found that over 80% of them, by the time they graduate, have learned some skill that is potentially useful. So whether it's in social media or graphic design or, something handy, put this to work. Don't just look at it as, I just learned it then so that I could be, stay busy in school or earn some extra money. Well, the truth is, you look at the labor market around you. You may not find yourself in your line of work or for what you studied, but sometimes you do what you have to do to be able to do what you want to do down the line. And so, in a general sense, that's the advice I would give.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Simi. I mean, you have said very good things this afternoon. I mean, you have educated both millennials, the older generation, people in power, people in policy making, and every other person who has tuned into this edition today. Thank you so much for the time. I really, really appreciate it. I think I owe you a cup of coffee when you're back in Lagos.
I'll take it. You know me.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. All right. It's been a very wonderful time with Simi. This is Tomi Wale again. It's always a wonderful time. I think I enjoy this show more than you do outside there. Right. To get the podcast of this, you should go on africabusinessradio.com to, of course, listen to the podcast again and share it as much as you can. Right. And don't forget to go on getupinc.com to take the African Millennial Report survey. It's going to be an interesting survey that can be used to build your marketing decisions in 2020. All right. Have a very, very wonderful afternoon, and bye for now.
listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.